Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Hi, this is Eric.
And this is Marcella.
And welcome back to Romulans Bearing Gifts. This is episode 76. And something different now. And something I've been looking forward to for quite some time. Because obviously, Marcella, you're new to the podcast. But the listeners don't know, I've been trying to have you on for a really long time. Actually, even before this podcast existed. Going back years to my Doctor Who podcast, Mostly Harmless Cutaway, years and years ago, I've been wanting to have you on. So I am delighted and welcome.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much. Wow. I'm really honored to be here. Seriously. I'm looking forward to this.
That's good. I don't know that many people are honored when they show up, but I can roll with that. And just a little bit before we get into the episode, where are you coming from as it pertains to Star Trek in particular? Briefly, how'd you get into it, and what is your favorite and perhaps your least favorite or least liked of Star Trek?
Well, I first fell in love with Star Trek. Gosh, I must have been about 6 or 7. I just loved everything about it, the worlds, and I thought Captain Kirk was just awesome. I thought he reminded me of a cowboy. And then when I was reading about Gene Roddenberry, he was like, that was the intention. And I just fell in love with that. So I think I just love everything about Star Trek. My favorite episode would City on the Edge of Forever. I think that's just everybody's, I hope. But
I was wondering series, but I mean, by all means.
Oh, series? Okay. Okay, then series, the original series. I don't have any other series. I love Picard, but the drinking tea and being a diplomat wasn't my thing. I really liked Kirk because he went out there and he was going to shoot everybody and sleep with all the women. I guess I know.
I can absolutely relate to that.
So
in the best possible
that's
way.
the one thing I was like, oh, okay. I love Captain Kirk. It was just something about him. So.
And does your love extend, I'm assuming, through the original cast movies?
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. And all the books. I love the books. I love the movies. I even liked when when J.J. Abrams took over for those movies. I still, it wasn't the same love, but I loved that he was trying to bring it back and make it current.
That is very interesting. I want to go deeper into that another day. Not right now, but that is interesting that you brought that up right now. In light of the conversation we were having off air previously before this, that just adds another interesting wrinkle into your Star Trek history as far as I'm concerned. But we'll say that for another day. And what is perhaps, not to be negative, but what is perhaps your least liked or least appreciated Star Trek series?
Oh, I'd have to put it at Discovery or Picard, season 1 or 2, if that's where we're going to go, Star Trek. But yeah, Discovery, that was not my thing. Neither was Picard 1 and 2, but 3 was amazing. It brought tears to my eyes.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice, though. That's nice that worked out for you. Well, I'm sure there's much more that will come out here and there in this conversation, and perhaps more in the future. But the moment people have been waiting for, we are going back into TOS times, of course. And this will be, is there in truth no beauty, from season 3 of TOS episode 5.
The ambassador is most honored to meet you, Mr. Spock.
Clear passageways. The ambassador will be escorted to his quarters at once.
What is it he sees when he looks at you? I must know.
What is it?
Somebody nearby thinking of murder.
Do you know whether he saw the Medusa?
Yes, he did.
Then insanity will surely be the result, Captain.
Oh, yes, yes. You want him to die. Did you make him forget to put the visor over his eyes?
You're insane!
Captain. What? It's all right.
All right, here we go with this episode with this most befuddling title. I don't know about y'all at home, but I just can't remember the title as is. It's strange. I don't know. Maybe it's taken out of Shakespeare or something, or some other famous literary work, which is why it's worded in a little bit of a peculiar way. So, Marcella, you requested TOS.
I did.
But I chose the episodes. And let me just start by saying why I chose this one.
Good, because I was wondering that.
Well, there's not a lot to it, to be honest, but there's a little bit. There's a little bit. So, in my mind, I've seen all the TOS episodes because that's what I started with when I was about the same age as you. I mean, I think it started when I was around 5, and TOS was my first anything Star Trek, and it was one of the first shows I started watching on a regular basis that wasn't animated or aimed at kids directly. Like it was my first adult or primetime show that I was really invested in, and I largely thought I'd seen all of them over the years of my youth. Now, how I went about trying to choose an episode of TOS over the years, since the DVD releases and Blu-ray releases and streaming, etc., over the years, I have tried to start a rewatch of TOS from the beginning. And I've done this many times, but I only ever get like 4 or 6 episodes in, and then I just kind of forget about the rewatch. And then I'll come back to it months or years later, and I'll start back at 1. And then the cycle will just repeat itself. So TOS episodes from season 1 in particular, I have probably seen many more times than anything in TOS season 2.
That's a good season,
or especially season 3. It's outrageously stellar.
Yep.
But 2 and 3, not so much of TOS, and especially not 3.
Oh yeah.
And so recently, I've been wanting to focus just for myself more on season 3 and see what's going on there. And I know the reputation, and I know it had the lower budget, and it's generally regarded as the weakest season, the weakest writing, et cetera, et cetera. So then I don't really care about any of that. That doesn't really affect me when I'm watching TOS, like those types of things. That's not important to me. So I knew I was going to choose something in season 3. And so I was just looking through the thumbnails at what looked interesting. And just the fact that this thumbnail on Paramount Plus has the image of Diana Muldaur. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. Or Muldaur, who of course played Dr. Pulaski in TNG. When I saw her face right there on the thumbnail,
yeah,
I knew she had been in TOS, but I didn't really remember her episode. So I thought, okay, this is one for sure. This one's we're going with this. So that's how we got here. A combination of the thumbnail and it being in season 3.
Oh no.
Why do you say oh no?
Well, I was very curious. I was like, why this one? So it's fascinating.
So with this one, now you told me before that you know TOS specifically really, really well. And not only have you, of course, seen them all, but you've read all the novelizations as well. And I don't know how often you do this or how often you revisit this stuff. Maybe really frequently. I don't know. So before you even prepared for this discussion, how well did you remember this particular episode?
Actually, not at all.
Oh, great.
Crazy. I have seen them all, and I own them on those DVDs, that look like little, I don't know.
They have like yellow and green.
Yeah,
like
are they tricorders or?
Oh, the tricorder ones, the Blu-rays.
Okay.
The tricorder ones are the Blu-rays.
Okay. Yeah, I did not remember it in the way I thought I did. And I had totally forgot about the doctor. When I heard her, as soon as she stepped off the transporter, I was like, oh my gosh, is this real? So I Googled it. I was like, wait.
Oh, that is so cool.
So no, I hadn't remembered it. And I think seeing it, it was interesting to me as well, seeing it now as a grown woman than seeing it, being young and a teenager and in my early 20s than seeing it now. It was very interesting for me, actually.
I can guess already in my head what some of those things might be, but I don't know. So you said like it was different than you remembered. What were those key differences that stood out to you now?
The main differences have to do with her as a woman. I had never paid attention to her. It had always been Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and like, how are they going to get out of this episode? Like how are they going to conquer the baddies? And I actually was really intrigued this time with her as a woman, and having to deal with all these men.
Oh, yeah.
It was really interesting to me.
Yeah. See, okay. So that was along the lines of what I was thinking, because certainly those elements jumped out at me as well.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So, and you can help me out if I get some things wrong in just the premise we have here, because it's funny. I mean, I watched it twice today, and yet I'm not even 100% sure about certain particulars about the story.
Oh, neither am I. I have some questions for you too.
Great.
I was like, wait a second. Am I not understanding Star Trek? I must be missing something here.
Okay. So they're just transporting this ambassador, right? Yeah. They're escorting this ambassador, which is one of the biggest Star Trek tropes ever. But this is a Medusan ambassador. Mm-hmm. And we all know what Medusan means from mythology. Mm-hmm. And it's weird how they describe this creature. So this species has evolved to where they don't have physical bodies anymore. But I believe this is how they describe it even in the episode, maybe in the captain's log or something, that while they've evolved to like non-corporeal beings, they're also incredibly ugly.
Yes, that was so interesting.
And it's weird that they say that and they imply it more than once. There's even a point later, and it's like, why would you be with someone so ugly?
Yeah, and the ugliness can drive you insane.
Yes, and it's weird because, as science fiction usually is, or often is, especially quote unquote classic science fiction, a lot of times there's allegorical elements, or yes, these are aliens and space anomalies, but what are they really trying to say? And so if you start digging into this, I mean, in your head, what is the writer or author really trying to say here? Like,
well, I mean, I thought, is he trying to say she's so beautiful? What is she doing with somebody so ugly? I mean...
Oh, actually, the writer is a female. She's a she.
That's interesting. Well, is she saying that you're so beautiful and you're here with somebody so ugly? How can you... Because they say it multiple times.
Yes, but I'm like, what is this? Like, does this person have an issue, like in real life, with people dating someone who's like less than their class, like aesthetically? Like what is the message here? Or do they not even mean physical beauty? Do they just mean being someone who is not a beautiful person, like in kind or in their soul or something? I don't, but it feels very on the nose. And it's frequently mentioned how gorgeous she is.
Yeah.
The doctor's character.
And it's mentioned Yeah, multiple times too. Of she's so beautiful, she's the most beautiful. How can she be with somebody so ugly? I think even at the table when she was with Kirk and Dr. McCoy says something like, "How can you spend all your time looking at something so ugly?" And she comes back at him and is like, "Well, you deal with disease all the time.
Yeah.
How can you, somebody who's so happy, deal with all this disease and death all the time?" So
Yeah.
interesting.
So, and then for the listener, the thing going on with this Medusan race and this particular ambassador is that because they're so ugly, which again, I don't even get with a non-corporeal being, but whatever. Because they're so ugly, if a human sees or views the ambassador with their naked eye, then it can drive them insane. Okay. All right. So, and there's these protective glasses or visors, which are not even like,
They really work.
I don't know, but they're not even effective for humans. Like they're not good enough to protect humans. But Spock, being a Vulcan, he is able, like using the visor, he's able to look upon the creature and not go crazy himself. And then,
Like that confused me because he's half human. I thought he'd be a little bit more susceptible.
well, I think it was McCoy who had that worry that he brought it up,
Mhm.
but I can't remember who said. I don't know if it was Spock himself, but basically it was like, yeah, don't worry about it though, because I'm shorthanding, but basically I'm so invested in my, Vulcan culture inside, like I'll be fine. And then what's even more curious than that is the Doctor character, the one played by Dana Muldaur. She's a human, right? Because I almost wondered if she was like an early version of Betazoid or something.
But she's blind though.
Well, hold on.
Oh, sorry. Did I
Spoiler.
spoil?
Okay. I mean, I was getting to that, but before we even get to that, she's a human, quote unquote, but she's telepathic and she was just born that way. Like, what? And with newer Star Trek lore, if you had that in your head, that obviously didn't exist when this came out, but if you had that in your head and you see that she's a human who was born with telepathy, I mean, you might think she's an Illyrian or something, because how could a human just be born with natural telepathic abilities? See, that's even like, that's super strange. Like, I don't know where that comes from. I mean, it's like so out of left field, but we just go with it.
Mm-hmm.
She just happens to be a telepathic human, and because she had that since birth, she herself studied on Vulcan for years because that helped her like quell her ability, because apparently, she's kind of like Jean Grey in X-Men, and she can get overwhelmed with hearing everyone's thoughts around her. So she studied on Vulcan to control that, and somehow that makes her also able to view the ambassador with the visor on. But of course, Marcella got right to it. And no pun intended, but I did not see this coming in the episode.
You're kidding, really?
Did you?
I was like, there's got to be something. I thought something was up. Yeah.
Oh, something was up, but that was not what I was thinking. Because, before it gets revealed to us, the audience, once they get settled in their quarters, she removes the visor. And it's like, what's that all about? And what I thought was happening was, I thought that she had already either looked into the being, or maybe it was through her telepathy. I thought the being had already made her a bit crazy. And I thought she was putting on this facade of, I'm fine, I'm normal, I'm cool and collected. But I thought inside she had like some insanity brewing, and or she was under the influence of the ambassador somehow, and the ambassador was sort of like controlling her.
Oh.
I don't mean like literally controlling her, but kind of like what Khan did to Chekhov in Wrath of Khan via the earworm, like how he was sort of like influencing him in a way. So I thought they had that type of relationship, the Doctor and the ambassador. That's what I thought was going on.
Okay.
And she was like in cahoots with him, and they were going to do something dastardly on the ship. But lo and behold, she's blind. And I just didn't see it coming at all. And then, but she, if you watch the episode, how could she be blind? Because she walks around and she interacts with everyone and everything, like totally fine. Apparently her dress, or the outer lattice thing that's on the outside of her dress that she wears, apparently has sensors in it, and it operates the way Geordie LaForge's visor works. So she has like a Geordie LaForge like visor dress.
Yeah.
But she can sense everything around her, and she knows the distances of everything in a way that like Geordie could perceive, but not actual normal human vision.
Yeah. But if you look at her in the episode, she doesn't really look at them right. So I was like, ooh, something's going on.
Well, yeah, that's why I thought,
Yeah.
that's why I thought she was like mentally under the influence or something.
Yeah. So that was really interesting. I swear, though, I did not realize she did not have a visor in the beginning.
Well, she wore it at first, but then she took it off. Yeah.
I don't even remember that. I thought she didn't have the visor, so that's why I was like, huh, something's going on.
Yeah, well, and this is a little bit of a different topic as it pertains to the episode. But yes, you're right. It is apparent there's something weird about her affect, like from the very beginning. And part of me thought, oh, it's her having that Vulcanness, even though she's human, but she's just so, inculcated to Vulcan culture and ways and mores. So I kind of thought it was a little bit of that. But another weird thing about this episode I noticed, or maybe it's just me, I don't know, but the whole tone of the whole episode felt different to me, or off, compared to any old random TOS episode. Like it felt much more like just the acting and the mood felt very more just by the numbers and matter of fact.
Really?
Yeah, the characters in general didn't feel as natural, like the regulars didn't feel as natural and like that regular family group camaraderie they have. Like it felt very sterile to me, and that really stood out. So the fact that her character was a little bit of an oddball, it was also masked because I felt like everything of the episode felt a little bit different, and it's not just the acting and the pacing and everything, but there's a lot of non-conventional camera shots.
I liked those, actually. Yeah.
Well, I liked them because they felt so different,
right?
Yeah.
That fish lens that they had.
Yes, the fish lens. We get like the really rare shot, which I only recently noticed on Facebook because someone posted something about it. But I don't know that it's very seldom used and may not ever be used again in TOS. But the camera view of looking out of the turbo lift doors and looking into the bridge from that.
Really?
Yeah, so if the bridge was a clock and if the view screen was 12 o'clock,
okay,
we're seeing a view coming from 6, 7, like 8 o'clock, 7 or 8 o'clock on the clock, looking towards, the captain's chair. You practically never see that angle of the bridge. And like that piece of the set that is right of the view screen, that whole quarter panel area, is virtually never seen.
Really? I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, because normally that's where the camera always is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for filming, they would have that section removed and the cameras would be located there normally. So this is a very rare glimpse of seeing the opposite direction.
Okay. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, that really, really stuck out. Because, it's almost never seen in the series. Maybe in some of the movies, but very rare.
Huh. And that's interesting you said about, so you did you think like Kirk, Spock, McCoy, that just didn't, and Scotty when he came in, they didn't gel, they didn't feel right?
Yeah, everyone felt like really uptight and stiff. There was a few moments where I felt the regular, and it was from McCoy a couple times, where it felt like McCoy, but in general, and you haven't really watched the original animated series, have you?
No, I don't know.
Well, if you watch it, that style of animation is also very static, where characters are very motionless and they just deliver their lines like very still. So it almost reminded me of the feel of the animated series, except with real people.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was very strange. I don't know what's going on. I know there was a lot of upheaval on the show that pertained to the third season in particular, and maybe they just did not have the regular crew who was used to working on the show, like behind the camera, etc.
Yeah. I mean, did you think, okay, the first thing I noticed in the episode was Nimoy seemed like he was sick. Like his voice was totally different. It sounded like he had a cold or something.
Okay.
So like I was like, oh, is he really sick? He sounded really sick. So I don't know if maybe that's also part
That's
of,
certainly possible.
yeah,
Certainly possible. Everyone just felt like really
that's interesting.
stiff, literally and figuratively. Another interesting thing was another thing I had just seen on Facebook literally a day or two ago was like a collage of images of Scotty, like throughout his time playing the character. And there was an image of him in that fancy dress, I guess Scottish inspired uniform.
Uh-huh.
And when I saw the image a day or two ago, I was like, what? Is that real? Like, where does that come? I don't recognize that at all. And I almost thought it was like a fan in a fan-made costume, and then they just like photoshopped James Doohan's head onto the body, because I was like, I don't even know what this is. And then there it is. Like, I'm watching it today, and I'm like, oh crap!
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, there it is. Okay, here
That's
it is. So all right, so that's cool. So if you ever want to see Scotty wearing his very unique dress uniform, this is the episode for that. So the time where I felt a little bit of normalcy
Okay.
return to a character was again Bone. There was a couple moments with Bones, but the one I remember more specifically was fast forward to the end to fix their situation. Oh, and I'll address their situation in a little bit, because that's another weird thing. But to address the situation they find themselves in the ship, they need Spock to meld his consciousness with the ambassador, because putting their minds together, they will be able to navigate the Enterprise back to normal space. And when they first combine, and I can't remember what Spock says, but he's speaking very casually, and McCoy says, "That's not Spock." Oh, because he's talking to Uhura, and he says, "Oh, you're the one called Uhura. That means peace,
Freedom or something.
sorry, not freedom." Okay, well, let's go with freedom, because I didn't write it down, or it means something like that. Freedom.
It means national independence and freedom. Just Google it.
Okay, that was fast. That was really fast. And Bones is like, "That's not Spock." And then Spock replies with, "Doctor, I'm well familiar with Boyles, or I can't remember the author's name."
Byron.
Mm-hmm. And then McCoy says, "That's Spock."
Yep.
And it's really good. It's not just like the delivery, but if you look at DeForest Kelly's face and everything,
Yes.
it's really, really funny. But see, that was one of the few moments where I felt like the normal crew dynamic coming through in this episode.
Oh, okay. I can understand that. Yeah.
And that was a really good one. Okay. So this is a crazy premise. I'm trying to think now how they got into this situation. Oh, it was because the other character who we have not yet spoken
Can't
of,
stand him. Larry.
Larry. That's a very strange Star Trek name. But there's this guy Larry, and it's weird because, I mean, supposedly he was one. I mean, in universe, he was one of the creators of the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Scotty mentions that.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to learning more, because when Scotty said that, I was like, ooh, okay, here we go. And then that was it.
So Larry, and I forget how or why he was working with the Doctor and the Ambassador, but Larry, apparently everyone who encounters, it reminds me of the creature in the man trap. You remember the man trap, the one with the salt creature?
No. You're going to have to help me out.
It's one of the very first TOS
I have a horrible
episodes.
memory.
It's one of the
Okay, say some things and then maybe I'll catch
one of the
on.
very first. It's when they go down and there's and McCoy. They're going to escort this scientist, and McCoy's excited because his ex is like his assistant. And when they go down and meet her, like McCoy, he's amazed that she looks exactly like he knew her years ago. Like she doesn't look like she's aged a day, but through Kirk's eyes, she looks like an older, much older woman.
Yes.
And then when the crewman sees her, he just sees like a hot blonde.
Yes.
And so she's the salt creature who can disguise her appearance to anyone who looks upon her.
Yep.
And to the men especially, she always appears to be whatever they would find desirable if she's trying to attract them. And then, of course, when she attracts them and brings them in, then she does like the whole succubus thing, and like puts her like what do you call those things? The suction cups on octopus.
Like little suckers that she has.
Yeah. She puts them on her face and like she like absorbs like
Mm-hmm.
the salt out of them. And anyway, just like how that creature's mode is to like look appealing to males. That's what appears to happen with this doctor character. Just like any man who gazes upon her.
Really?
I mean, yeah, that's what's going on in the episode.
Yeah, I can see that. I also see how she's so beautiful and she's a strong woman that they want to make her theirs. I guess so. There you're getting my take from.
Well, yeah, and I
was like,
yeah, I don't know how much.
Yeah, they all seem in love with her.
Yeah. That's what I'm
Especially
saying.
around that dinner table, or I don't even know if that's the dinner table
Yeah.
scene or when they were doing. I was like, oh my gosh, they're all like fawning over her and how much they love her and how beautiful she is. And
yes, and Larry's the first one.
intense. Yeah.
Larry's the first one who displays, like, not only does he feel that way, like he's completely lost it.
He's crazy.
Because that scene where he's like, can you let me in? I really need to talk to you. And if you've ever watched anything, not just Star Trek, you know it's like where this is going.
It's like totally stalker.
Yes, 1,000,000%. And it's wild that she lets him in because she has to already kind of know, well, not to mention she's a telepath, but she has to already know where this is going. And she actually lets him in. And he's like, come on,
Yeah.
like, let's be together. And, why do you care about him? Talking about the ambassador. I'm right here. And then he just like forcibly kisses her. Now, I understand this is in that 60s way. That for right or wrong was prevailing like in 60s movies and television. So I get it in that context, but still, like, how is this going to work?
Yeah, the whole time I was thinking she needs to have her like phaser set to kill. At least stun. Like he was really intense. I couldn't stand him.
But it's like playing by the old James Bond rules, especially of the 1960s, but not just the 1960s. Whereas, like, if Bond is like trying to convert like a covert spy or evil enemy female, like to his will, if he can just get his lips to her lips, like they will not be able to resist. And so he's going to the
Larry is not James Bond. Poor Larry, and that's why he gets so upset, doesn't he?
It's wild. I mean, not just the kiss, but just in general, like how he's just gotten completely infatuated.
Yeah, I couldn't stand him. I can go on and on about the things that just irked me on Larry, but yeah.
Well, then he sees the ambassador and he goes wild. And it reminded me of, and maybe it's not something you want to think about much, but it reminded me of the season 2 episode of Strange New Worlds. The one where they have the mining facility and there's a Latino crewman who works on the station. I think his name was Rocha in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And they bring him to the Enterprise and he goes wild and he gets into the nacelle and he's trying to like sabotage the ship.
Yes.
He very much reminded me of Larry when Larry went crazy and went straight to engineering.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so he's like fussing with the controls and engineering.
And Scotty is fangirling over him at the time. So he's like, "Oh, you've come back." I was like, poor Scotty. So happy to be let down.
No, it's so funny. Okay, let me take a side trip real quick because let me go down a rabbit hole. That's not really Star Trek for a second, but this happens a lot on the podcast because you sparked an idea in my head. So recently, I've been watching a lot more anime than usual, and I know you don't really watch anime, Marcella, but are you familiar that in many anime there's like these scenes where characters like overreact their emotions?
No, you're gonna have to help me out here.
Well, if you ever saw like old school like Looney Tune cartoons and things like that, remember when there's like the character, or when a character would like see a beautiful babe and he'd like turn into a wolf or something?
Oh yeah.
And like his tongue would come out, his eyes would pop or something. Well, anime is known for those types of things. They don't do it the same way Looney Tunes did it, but anime is known for whenever a character feels an extreme emotion, like they might get an instant nosebleed, they might start crying, or like snot comes out of their nose, depending on what the situation is. And the way you were talking about Larry and him freaking out, and then the way you just described Scotty when you said he was fangirling or whatever, I am seeing like the anime image of how they would draw that and how Scotty would look in anime. This means nothing to you because you've never seen these things, but it's all I can now see in my brain because I've been watching a lot of anime in the last week or two.
It was.
It's funny. Okay, back on Star Trek.
At the dinner party, poor Scotty was so excited, and he was like, "Do you want to come see, the engines and everything else?" And he was like, "Nah, another time, buddy."
Yeah, because he has to go see.
And then when he showed up, yeah, Scotty was just so happy. I was like, "Oh, poor thing."
I know. No, it's great. But the point is, though, when Larry sabotages whatever he sabotages in engineering, this is the part that...
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Somehow the ship goes out of regular space into some kind of void where now that the Enterprise has no frame of reference, like they can't refer to any stars or anything in the galaxy, they are unable to navigate, therefore unable to get themselves back to regular space because they passed this barrier. I don't know what this is other than a plot device or convenience, which is fine. I mean, if that's what it is, but otherwise, what is this?
Yeah.
I mean, this is certainly the days of Star Trek where anything can happen at any moment because there isn't much established lore anyway. But it was just... if this were to happen in Strange New Worlds today or Discovery, people would burn down like Paramount Studios if they were to have something like this in a plot.
Yeah, I think they would have burned it down just by the treatment of women in general, first of all.
Yeah. But, yeah. If they did that now, yeah. But yeah.
I don't know. I think the Flim plot would be fine. That's good with writers these days. They're okay with that. I'm getting on my hating. Yeah, I just thought that was another device. To me, it felt like another thing of, okay, the man's going to come in here and save.
I mean, that's fine. It's just that you have to go that far-fetched. I feel like there's a lot more things that wouldn't be so mind-bending to wrap your head around,
I mean, this episode was so out there anyways, and I felt they just, at the point where they're pimping their pen at the dinner scene, that's the point where I was like, okay, they just don't even care for this. I don't know, and how you were saying maybe how you didn't feel the camaraderie and the relationship between them. I just felt at that point, I was like, I just don't even think they care at this point. So plot, everything was thrown out. I was like, okay, what are we watching here? So I was just along for the ride at that point.
Yeah, going back to that dinner scene, that's an important point to bring up because the whole IDIC thing, and I didn't really know how to refer to it before watching this because honestly, it wasn't something really embedded in my Star Trek consciousness until pretty recently,
Mhm.
and I mean recently, like 2 months ago or something. Because I always recognize the symbol that the Vulcans use, sort of like the triangle. It's like a Star Trek version of the Deathly Hallows or something. um, I've always been aware of that logo or symbol used by Vulcans, but I never really thought about it that much and never really thought about what it was supposed to mean until about 2 months ago. Um, and then I always wondered since 2 months ago, I wonder when they bring this up in Star Trek.
Mhm.
And once again, lo and behold, in this episode, Spock goes out of his way to put that pin on his service like formal uniform,
Mhm.
and the doctor notices it, and I think she kind of takes it as an insult.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, which is wild.
She thinks she's trying to get with what's his name, Carlos. Yeah.
And in the episode, they refer to it as I think they say edict or idic.
I don't remember.
They pronounce it one way or the other, idic or edict. Like, I was like, I didn't know you're supposed to pronounce the acronym in that way, but okay, because I've just been saying IDIC, but
That's what I've been.
idic, edic, or maybe the actors just saw it in the script and just
Mm-hmm.
said it, and just said it like it was a word. Maybe the editor on the screenplay like just wrote it like in lowercase or something.
Yeah, they didn't know.
Yeah.
Kind of like Criminal Minds with ASMR. They pronounce it ASMR.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, wow, that's something else they didn't know. And the writer just wrote something down, I guess. So it's the same thing. I wonder if it's IDIC and
That's so
edict or IDIC.
No, like back in 2015, I was giving somebody a ride, and they were talking amongst themselves in the back seat, and they were looking on their phones, like, or maybe they weren't looking at their phones, but one of the people said to the other, like, "Oh my gosh, like, I just saw this really funny meme yesterday." And they're like, really? Yeah. And they're like, look, this meme is like really, really funny. Let me find it. And I was like listening, like, what? What? Meme. And I said, like, I think that word is pronounced meme. And they were like, really?
Oh,
yeah.
You're killing me here.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. But Smart, that's crazy. Yeah, so yeah, if you want to see a lot of attention focused on that pin,
Yeah.
here's the episode for it.
And I Googled it because they spent so long on it. I know I was talking to you about it, and they said that Roddenberry was trying to sell those. So he was trying to pimp it. So that's why they spent so long on the pin.
Oh, that's nice.
And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, he didn't even care at that point. Like, he just wanted to sell pins. It's just crazy.
So does that idea that, if we take this as read, that, that was Roddenberry's intent and everything was literally just like sell some merch.
Sell the pin. Yeah.
Does that personally bother you on some level?
It does, but I mean, season 3 bothers me at some level.
Sure.
I mean, not bothers me. I just feel sad,
Okay.
They didn't have a lot of money. It was season 3. Poor Kirk is in his corset by then, right?
I don't know because
I know he's wearing a corset at some time. I don't know if it's 2 or...
I don't know, but it's funny you bring up his figure because I actually thought he looked a bit thinner.
He looked good.
Well, hold on.
Oh, no. In my notes, that is the first thing. Well, after the opening music, I said opening music is perfect. And then I said, Kirk is looking good. So
to me, he looked actually kind of leaner the way the new actor, I don't remember his name right now, but the new actor who portrays him on Strange New Worlds, he has a more leaner, lankier look.
Right?
In this particular episode. Yeah, but I don't know if I like that because...
Oh, really?
I kind of like remembering Kirk in my head as he appears more in season 1, where he just looks like he has more muscle mass. And I know there's a point where he starts to look like he has more other kind of mass besides muscle mass as well. But I like to just think of the classic version of him just being bulky in the good way.
Oh, okay.
So he kind of looked a little bit like a deflated balloon to me.
Really?
In this particular episode.
Oh, no, my Kirk doesn't need no muscle mass. As long as he's got his phaser.
All right. But he's definitely
I
trimmer.
thought he looked really good. That was one of the things I was like, because I thought now I could be totally misremembering, because I don't do like you. I really don't go back to season 3 much. But I thought season 3, he was a little, getting a little chunky, and they were complaining about his weight, and they were getting on him for that. So I was like, when I was watching, I was like, Kirk's looking good, like season 1 good to me. So
he definitely looks trimmer and slimmer. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if it's season 3 though, where he starts getting a little bit more dad bod.
Was it 2?
I don't know where it is, but for some reason I can picture that in some of the episodes where he's wearing like the V-neck, when
he has to do the official diplomatic things.
It's not just the diplomatic thing. He just starts wearing it for like many episodes. He does it in season 1 as well, but there's several episodes where he wears like the green tunic.
I don't mind that.
But sometimes during those times, for some reason, I can picture him with a dad bod, like wearing the green tunic. So, but I don't know.
We're gonna have to watch them then and see.
Oh, eventually we will rewatch.
Yeah.
But got lost for a second because we were talking
about body. See, we're objectifying poor Kirk, and we're supposed to be.
No, it's okay. No, I was just thinking because I don't know that much about it, but the more you read into Roddenberry, there are some curious quirks as
the
him
pin.
being like,
yeah,
well, yeah, the pin, but not just that, but he's made some curious executive decisions throughout his time.
So, okay, I was when I was Googling the pin, this is where I got stuck, and I started going down a hole, and then it was really late at night, so I'm not remembering correctly, but I thought I had read somewhere that Roddenberry by that point had already stepped away from Star Trek. So, but he wanted to pimp the pin, but it was, 3 or 4 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. So
no, sure.
Don't quote me on that, but I just thought that was really interesting that, there wasn't many people that were connected that really were pushing for the Star Trek feel, but he really wanted the pin. I don't know. I'm going off topic.
No, I get it. But he's made some other curious decisions over his time. One of the more notorious ones is about the original theme song for TOS, the one composed by Alexander Courage.
Oh, really? Do tell.
So at some point, I don't remember when this happened, but at some point, he penned lyrics for the song.
Really?
Yeah, that were never used, and they're very generic. They fit the theme, melodically, but they're very generic, like Star Trek, like to the stars or whatever. It's really corny, but he penned those lyrics, and they were never used. They were never sung aloud or anything like that. But supposedly, the way the story goes, the whole reason he did that, was because he did it to add his name to like the copyright of the song, so that he could get like 50% of like the ownership of the material.
Oh, interesting. I mean, in a money way.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
That's very interesting. That makes
sense. That's what I'm saying. There's these Roddenberry stories.
Wow.
And I mean, it makes some fans a little bit crazy to think about these types of things. I don't think about them that much. I just feel like, it's just a guy trying to do his thing on the side.
If I was Roddenberry, would I do that? Probably.
Okay.
But the theremin, or is it a person's voice instead? I would like to imagine it being a theremin.
I guess it depends which part or iteration you're thinking about, because there's certainly some vocals, and but there's also theremin probably as well.
But yeah, I think that's more pretty, but that's awesome. I had no idea. Thank you for letting me know.
No, yeah, but
is it somewhere where do they have one that actually has the?
I mean, you can find the words easily online.
But do they have like one that's actually somebody sung originally, or is it just the lyrics online?
I don't know if there's an original one. I'm sure there's fan versions, but
that's cool.
I'm not 100% sure if they actually recorded one like officially. TBD. Kind of hit most of the main points. on this. Although I have to say though,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's contentious, maybe even to bring it
Mm-hmm.
up,
Oh, bring it up.
I have to say, just as a matter of fact, Diana Mulder, she looks stunning in this episode.
Oh, is that okay?
The
Dr.
doctor.
Jones? Okay.
Yes, Dr. Jones. Yes. She just
Yes,
looks
she is
stunning.
beautiful.
She's gorgeous.
And her outfits, when I was watching them, I was like, those outfits are beautiful. They're so 60s and beautiful.
Yeah, but their 60s good because their 60s bad.
Yes.
Which we may talk about next week.
There is never 60 bad. Oh my gosh. Okay. There is never 60s bad.
Okay. Well, I have
My
more nuanced
home
opinion.
looks like 1962. So
that's awesome. And that's an interesting specific year to choose of the decade. But no, but in this, no, hers is fabulous. Her outfit, her costume. And then I assume most people in television productions of this era, women,
mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they're wigs for the most part because
yeah,
of
it
how
looks like one.
elaborate they are and huge. But that doesn't matter. Also, how her wig or hair has that twist in the front.
Mm-hmm.
I could not stop staring at it in an adoring manner. I found it immensely fascinating, and also added to her aesthetic. And then just the actress herself, like she was stunning. So at least she looked the part that everyone was talking about.
Yeah, she was stunning, and I don't know, we can talk about later or not at all, but she was stunning. But she was also, for me, I felt she was one of the strongest women we have ever had on Star Trek. To me, I was like, wow, she is
Okay,
a really strong woman, which I loved, and the men didn't know how to deal with it.
Okay, yes. Now, I can't necessarily say strongest ever because that's a very large territory, especially when we get into like even the 90s and beyond with the series.
Oh, no. I'm saying like the original series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry.
because I was going to qualify it and say, yes, though, if we're focusing on the 60s or the original series, then yes, she really very much stands out amongst her peers as far as female characters in Star Trek the original. Oh yes, she is way ahead of her time in that kind of way.
Yeah, so much so that you said the writer's a female.
Yes,
that she didn't even know how to. I feel like she didn't even know. She was right there on the cusp of writing the female, but I don't know if other people most likely had input into the writing and how the men reacted to her too. I thought was really interesting, but I thought she was a really strong female.
and this particular writer of this episode, Jean Lisette Aroesti, she's significant. I mean, not necessarily for this episode in particular, but the series at that time was known for not really taking in scripts from non-established writers, but she is one of the 4 people who were allowed to contribute or sell scripts to the series who was a non-professional writer. She was actually a librarian at the University of California.
That's awesome.
UCLA. She was a librarian and a Star Trek fan. So she was one of the 4 fans, essentially, who was allowed to submit scripts to the original show.
I love that. The way she wrote men was really interesting. Like when you brought up when Larry came into her room, and he was talking to her, and he said multiple things that it was just like women have to deal with on a day, not a daily basis, but if you're in a relationship. He brings up like that he's basically been rejected by her. She's wanting Kalos. And he's very angry about it. And he, as you said, he forces himself, he forces a kiss upon her. And he keeps saying, why don't you just be a woman for a change? And that stuck in my head. And I'm like, wait a second. And I had to pause it. And I was like, be a woman because she's not wanting you and she's wanting to do, she's in love with somebody else. She's prioritizing her career. So that's not a woman. So things that she brings up as a writer was really interesting. And it happens throughout the episode of things that men tell her over and over again. And to me, it was really interesting to see that and have that happen. And I think a lot of women will watch the episode and be like, oh gosh, I've dealt with that, and just move on. But it was really interesting in a Star Trek episode to have that. And to also, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but
No, go ahead.
when Kirk approaches her at the end, it's the same kind of thing. And she gets this over and over again. She gets this at the dinner table, men telling her that how can you look at this ugliness? You're a beautiful woman. You need to, accept a man. And she keeps choosing her career in Kalos, which is, her career / a man she loves instead. But at the end, when Kirk comes up to her and he's trying to, I'm going to put quotes here, distract her with his Kirk ways. And I'm like, and he's showing her flowers and everything while Spock is mind melding with Kalos. Like, first of all, Kirk, you're going to need a lot more distraction than you with a flower. Like, that's nothing to a woman, especially a woman like her. That's nothing. That's not going to distract her. So I didn't buy that. But him like deceiving her and thinking that she's just going to believe it. It was just interesting as a woman to see how the men react to this strong woman who's focused on her career, and this other interesting thing that they can't understand why she loves when they keep saying beauty is everything. I don't know.
No,
that's just something that was interesting.
I love it.
Especially the title being, beauty. And the men keep mentioning this. Kirk and McCoy especially keep bringing up beauty and why they can't understand why she wants her career in this other man who's not beautiful. So
no, I'm really glad you're doubling down on this, just because I know if I was with my regular, I know if I was with my regular podcast hosts on this show, I know none of us would go this deep or take this particular angle on this particular subject. So I'm really digging this. There's some more I want to say about that, but before I do, I like that you brought up like the flower scene, just because the reason that scene stuck out to me, aside from where it fits into the story, is it was obviously a redress of some Enterprise set, and I was trying to figure out which one it was. Like it kind of looked like the transporter room, but maybe it wasn't. I'm not really sure what it was, but it was definitely a redress set of, of course. I mean, it's not like they created a brand new set for that.
I don't catch any of those, so you're going to have to help me out with that.
Well, I don't know. Because I thought for sure it was a transporter room, but then when I saw the transporter room later in the episode, I was like,
oh no, Eric, you're spoiling the magic.
No. Which magic? You mean the magic of just realizing it's a repurposed set? I mean, that is such the Star Trek way. Throughout practically all iterations.
I never noticed it until somebody points it out. And then I'm like, no.
Of all iterations of Star Trek, especially the movies.
Oh, no.
The original crew movies. And then especially with TNG reusing sets from those movies.
Oh, no,
constantly
they do?
constantly repainting and using.
No.
There was a set piece, which is the sort of like the outer trim part of the turbo lifts on the movie bridge, the Kirk movie bridge. Like, I don't know what you call it, like the alcove or like the surrounding part of the turbo lift, like entryway on the bridge. That particular set piece was used for almost like 25 years straight.
Really?
In all different places in like the 90s series and everywhere. Absolutely. No. Star Trek is well known for this stuff.
Oh, this is why I read the books. No.
Well, why is that bad to know? Like to peek behind the curtain.
Then I start noticing it. I know this sounds weird. Yeah,
I notice it too, but it doesn't take me out of anything.
It does actually. It takes me, well, not for you. It takes me out of it. I start noticing it. I'm like, oh, and then I forget it's not real. I like to be in the, oh, this is so
Yeah.
real. I know this is so fake, but
and they still do it even in the newest series. Like if you remember the episode Ad Astra per Aspera, the courtroom episode with Una. Do you remember the courtroom itself where they were having her trial?
no, I don't know if I do.
Well, you remember she had a trial though.
Okay.
With the
yeah.
judge and everybody there.
Okay.
Well, that whole setting.
No, don't tell me.
No, you won't recognize it anyway because
Okay.
it's actually the same set from Discovery, except in Discovery.
No.
In Discovery, it functions as like the sort of like main like control room or whatever for like the Federation in Discovery.
No.
Or Starfleet, actually, I said Federation, like the main headquarter room for Starfleet. It's like the exact set. They just redressed it and made it into like a core room. Yeah, but whatever.
Okay. Can I ask you this?
Sure.
I don't notice this. Is this what, and you see this? You notice this when you're watching the episode?
Many of these things I pick up on. Some I don't catch right away, but I find out later. But as a kid, there was a lot of things I noticed for sure.
Oh, no.
Especially from the stuff from the movies I was talking about. I always noticed that stuff a lot.
I think I go in there and I try really hard I put this like on TV and film. I throw like a blanket over it. Like, this is real. And I try not to think it's fake. And then once somebody points it out, I'm like, oh no. And then I can start seeing it. But
to me, it's part of the fun.
No.
yes. It's part of the fun.
Well, that's so interesting, though.
But the other thing that was cool about the flower scene, the setting, was I thought, oh, look, are we finally getting to see the botanical gardens? Because when I was a kid in the late 80s and going into the 90s, I was a massive fan of like the Star Trek technical manuals that you could buy. And I used to obsess over those things and study them as if they were real, like engineering or science or whatever. I used to love those Star Trek blueprints and things they used to publish back then.
That's awesome.
And because of that, if you were ever into like Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise, that's one of the famous publications. If you're into that stuff, like you always learned that on the Enterprise, the movie Enterprise, that there's a botanical section on one of the lowest decks of the ship. And you can see the blueprints of it, and it looks really great because it looks like a little park.
Oh, that seems neat.
Like little ponds and walkways and trees. And if you read the book, the manual, then you'll learn that if you look at the model of the Enterprise as it appears in the movies, whenever they show it from the bottom, you'll see these blue squarish light looking things on the underside of the secondary hull. I apologize if I'm getting into real technical Star Trek speak for you, but there's these blue illuminated windows or something on the bottom section of the Enterprise. And if you read the manual, you'll know those are the windows to the botanical
that's interesting.
gardens. But we never really see it ever anywhere properly. And so when we saw this flower scene, I was like, oh, is this the infamous botanical gardens but it's, yes and no, but whatever, not important. I just never really seen it before, so I just made note of that.
That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. I can see where you'd be, that would be really neat to see a different part of the ship.
Yeah. And I noticed that we got that a little bit of that in this, seeing some parts we don't normally see.
Yeah. I feel like I would be the opposite of you. I was never into, I can't tell the difference between ships. I know the Enterprise NCC 1701 looks beautiful to me. I can tell you like, oh, the D is different, things like that. The B is different, the A, but I don't know all the technical details of it. But I can tell you how the emotions between Kirk and Spock and McCoy are, and I am totally a slasher, so I'm not ashamed of.
Oh, you're totally a slasher.
Yeah. So I'm on the emotional level, but I'm not on the technical level, but I can appreciate the technical.
Well, they say men are from Mars and women are from
There you go.
Venus. But that's funny though, because I don't think about the emotional part too much when I'm watching classic or older Trek.
Really? That makes Star Trek for me.
I mean, I do think about it, but I don't think about it a lot. But what's funny though, is that with Strange New Worlds, something that you said off air that you're not the biggest fan of.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is when I'm watching Strange New Worlds in particular, I get much more invested into the emotional side of characters.
Oh, that's interesting.
A lot more. If I can share something with you again,
okay.
For your sake, but I said it on the podcast, but of course you haven't heard it in a prior episode when we were discussing the musical episode.
Oh no.
Strange New Worlds. We're not going to get into it right now. I mean, you and I.
Yeah.
But when I first saw the teaser for that episode,
mm-hmm.
I already got tears in my eyes, and then for a particular reason, and then when I actually saw the full episode, that reason and that emotion was just amplified intensely for me. And what the specific part was really Uhura singing her song in engineering.
Okay.
When I actually got to watch the full version, and not only does the actress is already a Grammy Award-winning singer and performer, so she has.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she has all that already. We get it. She sings amazingly. But just when I was listening to the lyrics of the full song, something that happened to me that I mentioned on the podcast before is that I wasn't seeing the young actress anymore. I was just seeing the character of Uhura, not even necessarily Nichelle Nichols, but Uhura as if she was a real person, a real person, a real character that I've known for most of my life, and listening to the words and being taken away by the song. And there's some stuff that gets into musical theory with like some of the chords that are chosen, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But it all comes together. And I just felt like that song was like such a love song to the Uhura character in general. And that's what really made me well up with tons and tons and tons of emotion, because it made me feel so much for the character, for Nichelle Nichols, for everything and anything that has to do with Uhura. It's completely overwhelming for me. And the only reason I'm bringing this up again is because that's part of the reason why I love Strange New Worlds, is because I get so much more invested into the emotion and the being of the characters much more than I do with classic series of Star Trek or 90s series of Star Trek.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, wow. I think it is. I mean, the contrast between you and I is what I mean.
Yeah, that, and I knew nothing about that. So,
yeah. Oh boy. Okay. So then the other thing I wanted to say, because when you were just talking about the strong female character and on all that, and about the author, and I alluded to this earlier, but I still am wondering in my head, like, what exactly is her message, the writer's message with this story, with the allegory? Because on the surface, it can seem very straightforward. Just a woman trying to.
You can love an ugly man.
Is that what that and dealing with like having other men constantly coming at her and sort of wanting to preserve her own autonomy and wants and ideals. Because you mentioned, Larry said, like, why can't you be a woman? And I'm assuming what is meant by that line and is meant by the writer herself. When he says, why can't you just be a woman? I think he means woman. Larry means woman in like the Neanderthal way of woman, like, or you could say the old-fashioned 1950s, like, just fill your role. I'm the guy, I choose you, so you just back me up and you just go with it. I'm assuming that is what is meant by that line.
Yeah, I was wondering what he meant by that line.
I think that's what he means. He means woman, like,
why don't you just be a woman
in the quote-unquote traditional sense
of love him, even though she doesn't love him, just suck it up and
I chose you, now you fill your role and
even though you don't grateful. Like me at all.
Right, because it's not important. It's not important, and the way this works. And so I think that's what they're going for, and the writer. And I just wonder. I'm assuming this is probably something, and of course, this was in the era of when this came out, when this was written, was the era of
68 around.
early, yeah, 68, 69, early women's lib of that era. Because obviously it existed before that, it just wasn't called that. And so I wonder if the writer was really steeped in that type of cultural revolution that was happening at the time. I wonder how much her own like personal experiences were folded into that, perhaps a lot. I don't know, but I'm just really curious about all that. And
Yeah, me too.
and certainly another alternate title for this episode, very simply, like could have been the working title, would be something like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That's certainly, the premise they're going with here.
Yeah, or I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. Or is that a couple
years
later?
It did come out a few years later, but a couple of years later. But I would say that's a little bit broader. This is more specific. I
don't know. She does choose. I am woman. She does.
Oh no, certainly.
Yeah, she does ultimately choose her career. She chooses her career and love, which are kind of combined.
No, absolutely. No, that's absolutely a theme.
She has Larry go mad, whether, she doesn't mean to. It's not her that does it. But I thought that was really interesting as well.
No, that is absolutely a theme. And it's kind of like, yes, the groundwork, but then it's more specific on how you see people. Because I thought it was even though it feels on the nose at first glance, the idea that this species is called Medusan. And we all know the Greek mythology, right? About Medusa. But what's interesting is I don't think that's the only Greek reference in the story or the screenplay. And I like how the writer has gone to this Greek well, so to speak. Because we have the concept of Medusa, who if any man gazes upon Medusa, they turn to stone.
Yeah. In the Greek version of beauty, basically.
Yes, but, oh, wait. Yes and no. Because there's a foil to that concept in Greek mythology. And that is the sirens. The sirens in mythology. And the doctor, she's a siren, essentially.
Is she though? Or is Carlos?
Yes, she is.
Okay, tell me how.
Well, they both are in different ways. So
she doesn't hurt anybody.
No, but
Carlos does though.
No, yes, I know, but that true. But you see, the Medusa or Kalos represents being driven crazy or wild from ugliness, quote unquote. And she, as the siren-like figure, drives people crazy through her vision of beauty. And no, she doesn't necessarily personally cause harm to people, but like the sirens in like the Iliad or the Odyssey, the sirens can cause men to lose their normal mental faculties. So it can cause them to act irrationally and do themselves in. So she may not harm them directly, but she can still cause them to lose sight of themselves.
I can see Larry losing himself.
Well, he's the most obvious extreme example in the story. And while Kirk is known for being Kirk,
yeah, he's totally
still
Kirk.
Though, just the way every male notices her, though. It's that.
Yeah, they do notice. They notice her. I think Kirk. I have multiple problems with that whole Kirk section in the flower garden. That just to me don't make sense. I don't know. I don't want to get off and like.
But it's also hard to know. And yeah, we don't have to go far into this either. But it's also hard to know in this episode in particular how much is Kirk doing it because he's Kirk and his libido, and how much is he doing it as like a stratagem, or maybe he's doing both. I don't know.
He's doing both. Well, this is my point of view. He's doing both, but he's not really. I think he's trying to use her. I love Kirk. I've always really liked him. In this episode, I didn't like him at all, especially like the flower section. I was like, girl, you need to have your pepper spray out if you don't have a gun or a phaser. I didn't like that at all, how he went at her and he was really physical with her. And that was when I was telling you, I viewed this differently as an adult female than a child, teenager, early 20s female. That really got to me when he was really aggressive and on top of her during that flower scene, and he was really in her face and pinning her against the wall. I was that's the I have always loved Kirk, and at that point I was like, oh, I would have done so many things to Kirk if I would have had my phaser with me. That would have been set to stun. He would have been on the ground. He got really aggressive with her, and it was to a point of scary a bit. And I know this is the 60s, and
It's the 60s, and again, I think it's the writer's will as well.
the writers, but and I don't know how many people had control once she wrote the script, how many came in and
That's fair.
adjusted it. But that was him manhandling her was just really got to me. And the fact that she reads minds, she would have known what Kirk's intentions were in the first place in that flower scene. And that alone, I was like, wait, what are the rules again on this episode? I paused the episode and I was like, wait, what are the rules again here? Because I was like, she would have already known what Kirk's intentions were, that they weren't noble. He wasn't in love with her. And he seemed really aggressive, which was usually Kirk is when he's with a woman, it's both ways. It's consensual. They want to be with Kirk. He wants to be with them. Whether it's, a green woman or whatever it is, it's consensual. And this time he was confronting her. He was telling her, you're just jealous. He was really aggressive to her. And that, I don't know, that put me off on Kirk. And that's never happened before. So with this episode, Eric, you have crushed me on Kirk.
What?
I was like, oh, Kirk has never acted like that. I just thought he was I was like, oh, that's not something he would have ever done. He's always, anytime he goes for a woman, the woman either is very aggressive towards him and like, come on, buddy, I want you as mine. Or he's the other, it's consensual. And this was the first time he was really kind of ugly with her. And the fact that in the episode, he even tells McCoy, he says, I might have gone too far. She might not save Spock because of what I did.
Yeah.
Because how aggressive I was. I was like, okay. They even acknowledge it in the episode that he was really aggressive. So I thought that was really interesting.
That is interesting. And once again, I think this is all part of the writer's intent for this particular story. And even I just had a thought now.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that she's a telepath,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another more out of universe device than in universe. Because again, just a randomly born telepath. I think that's another allegory, or meant to be, for just a woman who has really good insights into the male psyche. I think that's I think that's the whole reason her character possesses that trait, because the writer wanted to portray a woman who is really able to see into men.
I agree. And I think
Thank you.
Yeah. If there's women Star Trek fans to watch this episode and go like, oh gosh, it just gave me a different perspective of the characters, of how it must be to be a strong woman in this, coming into coming into this whole situation and dealing with these men, how it must be for them. It was like a little insight of, you get to see how at the dinner table McCoy reacts to her, and he is totally in love with her, and he keeps saying how beautiful she is, and why would you want to be with this ugly man, and and everybody is fawning over her. So it's just, as a beautiful woman who's a strong woman, because we don't get many, we get a lot of beautiful women. I know in other episodes we'll talk about,
No
we
shortage.
get other strong women, but usually they're beautiful women like Yeoman Rand, who I love,
Oh.
who I love dressing up as Yeoman Rand
Oh, wow.
at Comic Cons all the time. But you have women, but they're not on the level of Kirk and Spock and McCoy, or even higher. So you have a woman here who's just the same level as them, and how they react to her. It's really interesting to see just the everyday occurrences and how she deals with that. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, thinking about all that, it makes me want to go back and revisit the TOS episode with the female Romulan commander.
Oh, we'll have to do that then. Yeah, I would like to.
You're
Yeah,
making me think about that now.
to see how, because and that's what I liked about this episode is I had never seen it as a woman, as okay, this is how she dealt with Kirk and people on her level, and that was really interesting. I really, yeah.
No, I like it. I like it. Wow, I had no idea we were going to have this much to say.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. It's just when we started at the outset, I was like, man, I got like 6 footnotes on an index card. I don't know where we're going with this, but no, this is fantastic. But just to start to ramp it down, did you have any final thoughts before we go into rating this episode?
The final thoughts was, gosh, I guess just being a woman in this world, and I know it's a 1960s view. I thought it was pretty fair, but she really has a lot of, a woman is not, as going back to the title, a woman is not just beauty. We're other things as well. As she brings out, Dr. Jones brings out, she has a career. She has love. It's nothing is just beauty. So I really liked that about the episode. And I think that goes back to the title of it's not just beauty. And that's what I loved. But season 3 is not my favorite season.
I understand, but
yeah.
I'm very open. I find in general I have a more open mind to a lot of things Star Trek fans generally like shy away from, or like I really appreciate Enterprise where many people don't, and things like that. Because I don't know, when it comes to me, I can like separate. I can almost take my brain out of my body, and just look at whatever Star Trek episode, not necessarily by its apparent faults. Like I can. This doesn't always work, but in general, I can usually find something else interesting about whatever particular story. I'm not going to get into it right now, but I recently watched Spock's Brain on purpose because everyone kept comparing Subspace Rhapsody to Spock's Brain, so I had to go refresh myself on Spock's Brain, and it's largely regarded as one of the worst TOS episodes, or so people say. And I'm not saying it was a great or amazing episode, but it was fine. Like I didn't watch it and like recoil or like, oh, this is so stupid or this is ridiculous. I didn't have any of those types of feelings. I wouldn't either. Yeah, that's just me. But anyway, let's see. So the way we normally rate things on this podcast and my other podcasts is we pick some type of significant item or thing in the episode, and we use it as our unit of measure. It's really easy. Really easy for this is how many IDIC or edict pins out of 5. That'll be our unit of measure. How many edict pins out of 5 would you give this particular episode?
Just in general, or is there certain?
It's just your own feeling and rating, and it's 1 through 5, and of course, half pins are allowed, like 2.5 pins, or 3 or 4.5 pins, but whatever out of 5.
As an overall episode, I would say it's a 2.
That's fine.
But as a subcategory, as watching it, if you view it as a woman in the 60s, I thought it was really interesting. I would put it at a 4 out of 5.
If we were in the 1960s.
Yeah, just to go
it.
back and think about how women were viewed in the 60s, especially since the writer and everything. 4 out of 5 was just interesting as a historical value. But as an episode that I just enjoy, yeah, it would be a 2, probably. 2.5.
Perfectly fair.
Okay.
Perfectly fair.
And you?
Me, I'm going to give it, I think, a 3 eye pins out of 5. Again, is it one of my favorite? Is it, did it grip me? No. But there were things about it that really intrigued me.
Mm-hmm.
And we discussed most all of it already, but there were so many different elements that intrigued me, like, what's the word? Like, if you study psychology,
Mm-hmm.
like, the thing that attracts humans in general are things that are novel, things that stand out against what they're used to in a particular thing. And this episode felt very novel to me compared to the TOS that I'm used to.
Okay.
I discussed how, like, the acting was a little bit different camera techniques, just an overall tone that felt different. We've gone at length talking about the writing and dynamics going on. And so this felt very unusual, and unusual can be bad, but it can also pull someone in. And so I was really pulled into this unexpectedly. It just gave me a lot to think about because it feels so different for TOS. And then, of course, then just having this discussion that we had, that's what happens with episodes that stick out in some kind of ways, that there can often be a lot to discuss. And for such a basic story on paper, there's a lot to unpack. And I love that in any episode of Star Trek or whatever it is, the thing that we're discussing. So I'm just really intrigued by this episode, and I will never forget it going forward. It will always stick out in my mind now when I think about TOS episodes in general.
That's awesome.
There we go. Yeah, please send feedback via the Twitters. Always checking that. I'm definitely looking forward, as I'm sure you are, to hearing Marcella much more in the future on this podcast, and perhaps eventually on some of the other ones out there that we produce. But closing out the show today, this is Eric.
And this is Marcella. And until next time,
peace and long life.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
So, like, when she first came on the ship, they did the greeting to each other, and then when she was departing, they did it again, and as they were saying goodbye to each other, Spock and she, Spock said, "Live long and prosper," and she said, "Peace and long life." And then I think Kirk said to her, "Peace and long life," after that. And I just thought it was so weird, because peace and long life is just like a dumbed down version of saying live long and prosper. And I just thought it was a weird thing. Like, it's weird that she's choosing to say her own thing rather than just doing the traditional live long and prosper back, But whatever. So it stuck out to me.
She's doing her own thing, Eric.
Hey, it's all good. I'm down with that. I like it. Okay, so here we go. Wait, what was I watching recently? I watched something in the last month or so, and the character was saying, "Be like a goldfish right now."
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said, "Be like a goldfish."
That needs to be my line.
Yeah, be like a goldfish right now, because goldfish are like the happiest creatures or something.
Oh, I wish.
Because they never, because they have the short memory. They never linger or dwell. I can't remember how the quote goes. Oh, I'm gonna have to remember where that came from. But anyway, so here we go.
You have to tell me if you remember it.
I'll figure it out. Let me write it down here. Look up goldfish quote.
Goldfish memory, because I wish I could remember more. I even, I told you I've been watching like Criminal Minds and X-Files. I was like, I should know all of this. And my sister and I have been watching Angel because of the writer's strike. And I was like, I don't remember any of this. Like,
oh yeah, it's been ages
don't remember
since I was deep into the Buffyverse.
Yeah. So Oh well.
But yeah, not to go off on Buffy. The only thing about Buffy though is I watch most of Buffy and most of Angel, not all, but most.
Okay.
What I really enjoyed though out of that universe was really just the first 4 seasons of Buffy when they were in their high school
Really?
years. That was my favorite time as being a fan of the show. And the other stuff was good and interesting, but it never felt like the high school years to me, which
I'll
is my
have to
favorite.
rewatch. I haven't done Buffy yet. So the first 4 years you really liked? Or?
Yeah. Well, besides Buffy, I mean, I've always had a thing in general for shows and movies that take place in the high school setting. And what happens with a lot of shows that when they transition to the college years, it just
like Saved by the Bell?
But many things. When they get to the college years, Dawson's Creek, whatever, things just get so weird and so different.
Really?
Yeah, that's generally how I feel. But I have a thing, like I said, for the high school genre in general.
And I have a memory of a goldfish, so I didn't even know Buffy she had a college year.
Absolutely.
I don't remember this, and I loved Buffy. I loved Dawson. Well, my sister loved Dawson Creek, so I saw all of it, and I don't remember any of it.
Oh yeah, season 5 went hard of Buffy.
Really?
Went hard into college. Hell
I
yeah.
don't remember this.
Oh my God, she had her boyfriend. What was his name? Riley.
Oh, I didn't like Riley.
I know. That whole thing was the college years.
Okay, so when did she get her sister? Was that college too? Or was that before?
Well, she was still in college, I believe, but it was like season 6, I want to say.
Oh. Dawn?
Yeah.
Poor Trachtenberg, right?
Yes.
Is that her name?
Yes.
She was so cute.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't remember this. Okay, I'll have to watch it. Because we were thinking about, should we rewatch Buffy? Because we had started Angel. And I know this is off topic.
That's okay.
But I was like, this is so slow. It just felt so slow. And my sister's really into TikTok. So and I'm going to say this as her attention span is like 30 seconds, and she was like, I can't do this. And it was just made me think about, wow, TV has really changed since Buffy and Angel. You know how Angel had these slow things. And I was like, what is going on? I was like looking at my phone, like, this is taking forever.
That is such an understatement to say.
Television it was slow. Really interesting. And
she was very aware.
And she told me, like, I don't know if I can do Buffy if it's the same way as Angel. And we stopped Angel. Like, I don't like how you were saying you get into rewatching Star Trek and then you stop. We got into Angel and we got about 7 episodes in, and my sister was like, I really can't do this anymore. Like, it is so slow. And I was thinking, like, can we fast forward? Is there like a 2X version? And it was just really interesting.
If it's on Netflix, you can watch it like that.
No, we don't have Netflix.
No, I don't even know if it's currently on Netflix, but I just started taking advantage of that feature recently.